Well, we're back with another batch of games from the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Originally, I planned to keep this a shorter video to instead just cover Ultimate Custom Night, the last of Scott Cawthon's era under the Click Team engine, since it is effectively an epilogue to the story of those original games that I just ran out of time to cover in the original video. However, to say I've fallen into the rabbit hole with this would be a bit of an understatement. I'm still hesitant with the big 3D steel wall games, even if I've since been told a few times by my friends that Secret of the Mimic is pretty good, which for those who don't know is part of the next main era of the series, but there was an offshoot from the games that had my interest as well, so I eventually decided to include it, that being Into the Pit. Although not canon to the original story, or at least I think it isn't, it looked to be an interesting alternative take on parts of the story in a fun, retro-styled horror experience that seemed a lot closer to the horror games I usually prefer to play. From there, I started planning out this video, but you may have noticed that's not all we're covering today, since we have two games that weren't the main jump into the next era in one video. What about the other two? Although made by Steelwall, the Help Wanted duology were still pretty different from the main games and entirely free on PlayStation. They were originally VR titles, but were both later updated to be able to play without such a device, so I had no reason not to include them really. I mean, I knew this video wasn't going to be as long as the first anyway, and I also knew the Help Wanted games really wouldn't take up much time in the video regardless, so why not? As a whole, consider this more of a hodgepodge collection of bonus games to the series that I decided to cover after having a mostly great time with the other games. Before we begin, however, I want to update a couple things from the original review. Firstly, I have played FNaF 4 again since the review, and enjoyed it a lot more on my second go around. I still don't rate it as high as my top 3 of Sister Location, FNaF 3 and Pizza Sim, but I can see the appeal significantly more than my original run. Also, I called Nightmare Fredbear Fazbear instead in that game, which I don't even know how that happened, as Fredbear was written in my script as such, so my bad. Next, in FNaF 1, I said I could see myself going back to do the highest custom difficulty sometime, and well, I did. I followed a guide to help me, so I can't take all the credit. Essentially, the strategy is that you just focus on stalling Freddy by having the camera stick to 4B. Check the cams often, and only check on Foxy when you have to close the right door anyway for Chica. It still took me a few to nail it down, but I got there in the end. Lastly, also with the original game, I said a night lasted 9 minutes total, 90 seconds per hour. Although that was probably what was intended, for some reason it skips a second at the start of each hour after midnight. So from 1 AM onwards is technically 89 seconds per hour, so 8 minutes and 55 seconds total. Not that those missing 5 seconds mean much, but still, I felt it was worth mentioning. It's the only game with this glitch, so all the other timers I listed in the last video are accurate. I've seen the two Five Nights at Freddy's films now as well. I like the first one for the most part, even if I feel William Afton really needed like 1 or 2 more scenes to establish him as a character properly before Spring Bonnie came into the picture, but I was more mixed on the second one as a whole. I get it was more about setting up the inevitable third film, but outside of the solid intro, the marionette scenes, and the bit where Vanessa has that nightmare about Afton, I thought the rest of the film was just okay. Plus, the withered animatronics were wasted, I felt. They looked so good, yet they collectively get like a minute total across the whole film of actual on-screen time. To be honest, I think the withers are my favourite design-wise of the original 4, so I was even more gutted they really don't get much time. The biggest takeaway, honestly, is just give me more Matthew Lillard. That man is a national treasure, and really sells how terrifying William is in a way I never could have imagined.
Don't you know you're my favorite? Don't you know that I love you? Don't you know that I care about you?
Okay, enough rambling. Back to business. 4 more games to tackle today. 3 short ones and a bigger one to end with. The same disclaimers from last time apply. I haven't watched any theory videos or lore guides, and this video isn't here to scare anyone, so jump scares will be toned down. I will still show them, but the volume will be pretty low, as they are a part of the game's DNA a lot more than I gave them credit for in the last video. Since the 4 games are far less connected as well, I'll try to explain what I think happens in each game as and when I find the time during the video, but outside of that, let's dive back into the mechanical madness.
Comfortable and then shake them up. It works miraculously well.
Oh my god. How many buttons? Okay, off rip, do not play this on a controller if you can help it. I did and pushed through the wall as much as I could, but the idea of playing with this many animatronics and that many things to worry about is hell once you crank it up. Which is fitting considering who we're playing as here. For those who watched the last video to the end, I assumed we were playing as Michael Afton for most of the games out to stop his child-murdering father, William. Well, at the end of the 6th game, both Aftons met their end in a fire along with all the other spirits still haunting the animatronics, thanks to William's old friend and co-worker Henry Emily setting up a trap to lure them all in. As for how Afton ended up in this particular hell, we'll get to that. There's not actually 5 nights here. It's treated like a custom menu usually unlocked at the end of some of the games. The nights are also very short. Outside of FNaF 3's first night, this is the shortest, 45 seconds per hour, so 4.5 minutes to beat the night, and the game keeps track for you down to the second. Not that this makes it easier, mind you, as have you seen the custom list? Although there's already 50 threats you can set the AI to, there's actually more than this, funnily enough, as there's a secret little demon called Didi, or Zor if you're playing on 5020, but I never really survived long enough to see that little one. We'll start with Didi, as it's a good place to start as any. She'll come in, warn you a new monster has joined, and then go about her business. They're a choice bunch, some can harm you, some can't, but usually make life harder in other ways, so even when dealing with other things, there's a constant acknowledgement that a random extra element could be added to the chaos for you to keep on top of. But now about those main 50, it's not actually every single death machine from every single game all in one, as Foxy is gimmicky enough that I can't imagine what letting half a dozen of them loose would turn this game into, but there is a healthy selection from every game covered in the last video. The original gang, the prequel sequel, Springtrap and the Spook Squad, the Nightmares, which also included a few I neglected to mention from the original video, as I never got far enough to bump into them, Nightmarion and Nightmare Balloon Boy, the latter of which is probably the dumbest design I've ever seen, Children's Nightmare interpretation or not. Then there's Circus Baby and her friends from Sister Location. Lastly, of course, the gang you could add to your pizzeria in Pizza Sim are here, and the scrap animatronics you fought off during the nights to boot. As you might already suspect, all of these have elements of their original gimmicks at play here. So you have doors to close with a limited power system, vents as well, there's your temperature to worry about, how much noise you're making, a vent and duct system alongside the usual cameras, Marionette needs her Jack-in-the-Box wound up after all, and you better watch out for Foxy dashing out of the cove. Heck, they even have the salvage minigame be how you deal with Scrap Baby, asking you to pay attention amongst everything else to when she lifts her head and then shocking her back down. I couldn't stand the thought of 10 animatronics to deal with in FNaF 2 and Sister Location, so 50 with the potential for random additions on top wasn't something I ever fully entertained, but I did mess with different combinations. Some on lower difficulties, some pushed all the way up, but I never even got close to thinking about the 50-20 run. If I were to even try that, it would be on PC, I think, but I also don't want to think about the level of strain that would put on my wrists either, as I'm not getting any younger here. There's 2 more threats on the main custom screen I haven't mentioned yet though. The first one is the funniest one, as it directly ties to the volume. The phone guy has an AI. You know the tutorial guy who calls you on the first 3 games? Yeah, if you don't pick up the phone, you get a random phone message from any of the games playing at full volume to make it get extra noisy for the sound-based animatronics. The other, I did not recognize at all. This 8-bit red guy, I had to look him up. Apparently he's called Old Man Consequences, and he comes from a spin-off called FNaF World. I have absolutely no interest in FNaF World, and even if I did, it isn't on consoles anyway, so I wasn't going to know who this was, unfortunately. I assume from the name alone he's a judge of sorts. Heck, he might be the ferryman to bring Afton across the river Styx for all I know. Either that or he's some form of death, especially considering a secret cutscene you can get by putting his AI to 1 and turning everyone else off, where he encourages the spirit of Golden Freddy to let go and move on in peace. But then again, I think he is more of a messenger or perhaps an angel at most, because Nightmarion I dubbed the Grim Reaper in my notes for a while. Nightmarion has probably the most annoying mechanic to deal with while I'm bringing that freak up. Other than being the mascot monster of this game, being front and center on the key art, they're the one that's almost always present on your screen when you start upping the difficulty. They spawn in a random spot in your office. If your mouse is over them, they'll start to materialize. Let that rock for too long and they become real and kill you. On a controller, there was no quick way to keep it off me and I died a fair few times. Back on topic, there's a lot of secrets in this game. Even when looking them up and following guides, I still don't think I found them all, especially when the real meat of the story comes from the animatronics themselves. What I mean is, this is a game made post-sister location, so that means we got voice acting, and I could finally hear Springtrap go ham on his voice lines like he does in Dead by Daylight. Huh? What do you mean he's one of the few that aren't voiced? Oh, I digress. The point is, many are now voiced. Some will just play up to their gimmicks, like Toy Freddy's thing is that he's playing his own version of FNaF, but is awful at it, so you have to go to his cam and help him. If he loses, he comes over to your office to sulk about it after he kills you. His voice lines play into this.
It's not my fault. I have these fat plastic fingers and can't press the buttons.
Some of them are just there to have a little fun, like Withered Bonnie, who doesn't have a face, so all of the lines are just jokes around the subject.
Time to face the consequences of your behavior.
Heck, one of them, Mr. Hippo, is honestly hilarious. I never died to him legitimately, so you kinda have to go out of your way for this to happen, but if he does get you, he'll go on a 4-minute or so long tangent you can't skip. You can straight up quit the game, uninstall it, then reinstall it, and he'll just start from the beginning and yap for another few minutes, and I love it so much. This game as a whole isn't designed to be scary really at all. It's there for people who like self-imposed challenges, so why not make it a bit sillier in places?
I guess what I'm trying to say is life goes on. Well, for everyone else, life goes on. Not for you. You're dead. But that's neither here nor there.
That said, some of them do have something to say that's important, so now's a good time as any to start talking story. I first noticed it when Withered Chica got me and had this to say.
I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed.
A few animatronics bring up the one you should not have killed. I'm pretty sure this is Golden Freddy, or the kid that ended up in the Golden Freddy suit, I should say. I am no theorist, but I already noticed back in the third game and mentioned at the time that Golden Freddy isn't in the true ending when Marionette freed all of the children's spirits. I think Golden Freddy never let their hatred go and never found peace, so instead torments William Afton in this infernal cage. From one twisted spirit to another. It's fitting that every time William lost in the classic games, fire was involved, yet his hell here is ultimately cold. That's what I think the Old Man Consequences scene is about. OMC is trying to talk the spirit that was in Golden Freddy down from their endless hatred. After all, William can't hurt anyone anymore, so the child should rest in peace. It's honestly a kinda sad tale to end on this otherwise kinda silly bonus game. William Afton is trapped in an eternal damnation brought on by one of the children he murdered decades ago who can't process there's love on the other side. Neither are able to actually move on to the afterlife due to the same incident. In fact, the marionette, or Charlie as she was, seems to be looking for a way to free them both from this cycle. I don't particularly feel sorry for William in this situation. He made his bed and now lays in it, but I do feel sorry for the spirit of Golden Freddy. It's a literal dead child that will never know peace, no matter how much said peace is offered to them. To wrap up this section, I like this game, but more for the story. I was never too big on the custom modes of the other games, so it might be to no surprise that I didn't stick around for too long this time either, with the exception of the jump scares being kinda comically bad, like they're all just JPEGs that shake, and the control screen only showing up once per startup despite just how much you need to understand at once. I can't really criticize too much because it's everything all at once as essentially a bonus mode for fun you'd have seen unlocked after the credits rolled into a bigger budgeted title. The only real thing I really didn't like wasn't even the game's fault. Like Sister Location, this game was unshakably a game built for mouse and keyboard, so they have a pretend mouse on your screen you use instead, but it's never going to be as snappy or as helpful as an actual mouse and makes everything requiring it far harder, especially when I'm dealing with too many other things and Nightmarion starts giving me the evils. I'm gonna put both Help Wanted titles into one section here because they're spiritually very similar to one another and there really isn't too much to say here. Firstly, however, shout out to Help Wanted 2 for finally having volume options. No FNaF game up until this point had any volume setting whatsoever and were usually really damn loud too, so this was a godsend. Thank you Steelwolf for realizing this was an odd thing about the originals and correcting it. But the Help Wanted games are effectively mini-game collections that poke fun at the history of its own series while also at the time letting those on console experience a version of FNaF for the first time when it released, as that was before all the classics finally dropped on PlayStation 4. They're designed for VR, and they feel like one of those virtual carnival games you might have played on the Nintendo Wii once upon a time, just with more of a horror focus. Not all of them land, especially considering I don't have access to VR, so I had to play them all flat, but I had a nice, albeit brief, time with both of them before moving on. Plus, with it being the first actually 3D game, you can see the animatronics naturally move too, which although takes some of the horror away in my eyes, I can only imagine, with a proper VR headset, would be absolutely terrifying. There's also a lot of new faces, especially in Help Wanted 2, that I can only imagine are from the Steel World games, hence why I don't recognize them, like Roxy or Sun. Because of the VR incorporation though, Help Wanted 1 has some compromises that you notice immediately if you've played the originals. It has a version of each of the first 4 games in it and aspects of sister location, but some of the minigame options. But the common trait with all of them is that they're way easier. The only way you're dying the Foxy in FNaF 1 is if you try to leave the office. FNaF 2 lets you run the cameras 24/7 while still flashing the office, so the marionette will never go anywhere, and everything has a set animation for entering and leaving, so there's never any doubt when the threat is gone. FNaF 3 makes Springtrap respond to the audio laws 100% of the time it feels like, and takes forever to move on his own, so you have plenty of time to repair whatever you need and get back on his case. FNaF 4 plays a little awkward because you have to actually move around in VR, but on a controller it's a little wonky, but to compromise that, it straight up doesn't have the Nightmare animatronics and instead is just Funtime Freddy from Sister Location. You can do maintenance like in that game as well though, then just a couple extra other mini games for good measure on top. They do still have a few lore secrets hidden away in it that I think are to help set up Security Breach, but I don't really think there's a story here per se other than being a little self-aware along with meta humor. It's the sequel that picks up the slack. Even something as simple as painting on paper plates has an extra intensity to it because Sun puts you on the clock to do it. I did have some fun with the Diner time management game too, but I think that's hard to mess up honestly. Help Wanted 2 feels a lot better than 1 as a whole because it commits more to the idea. The first game feels like a broken down Deadly Carnival ride. The second is a Deadly Carnival ride. It's a fun day out to the circus where everyone secretly hates you and will attack if provoked. Hell, Circus Baby is here too and seems very much like the real Circus Baby? Huh. I wonder if this game is based during the time when Baby was separated from Ennard and was finding her own way around before she became Scrap Baby. Either that, or it's a fanciful retelling of how Baby ended up catching Elizabeth. I know it's something to do with her eye colour, whether it's green or blue, that gives away if she's pre or post child murder for this thing. Unfortunately, there's really not a lot to say here. I think I'd have appreciated this a lot more if I did play it in VR, but to be honest, I got bored after like 20 minutes of either of them, so really didn't get far. I like trying out new things, but I'm not going to force myself to play something if I feel I'm getting next to nothing out of it. The big mystery for me was just who on earth these new animatronics were, presumably from Security Breach, so maybe I'll have to have a look eventually just to see what they're about. Lastly for today, Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit. Megacat Studios were responsible for this little treat as opposed to Coffin or Steelwool. Based on the Fazbear Frights book of the same name, Into the Pit is the most fun game I've played so far in this series, and at times, one of the scariest. It also actually has more standard game things in it, like actual accessibility options, difficulties, and general settings. Which will sound insane to make a comment on for any game, but yeah, no, there was basically nothing options-wise in any of the games before this. Heck, most of them only had subtitled language as an option, and that was only added with the console ports, for crying out loud. It's why I brought up the volume settings in Help Wanted 2. It's honestly wild there wasn't anything else for so many years of the series. The long-lasting fans really went through the works at times. It's also, quite humorously, the first FNaF game I've played on intended hardware. FNaF 1 through to UCN were all designed for keyboard and mouse. Both Help Wanted games expected VR, and I used a controller for just about every single one of them. Into the Pit is very controller friendly in contrast. But back to this game. Similar to FNaF 3, there's only one true threat in the game, although it's visually very comparable to Spring Bonnie or Springtrap, and so by extension this would be William Afton just like in FNaF 3 as well. Except not quite. What you're looking at is a supernatural entity given form, simply known as the Creature. It's honestly one of my favourite things about this whole franchise is how dedicated to its paranormal side it is. We play as Oswald in this little misadventure, a boy with a loving but troubled father who's out of work but trying to find a way forward. He can't afford his son to be anywhere else, so drops him up at an old pizzeria every day over the summer while he goes job hunting in a visibly decaying town. Oswald wants his father to just take them out of town, but a fragile grandparent ensures they can't go too far away. Heck, the town is so run down and broken that near the start, the father and son make a bet on whether a dead animal will still be on the side of the road, and neither of them even react when there is. But after a mention from another group in the pizza place of a blocked off ball pit, Oswald goes off to check it for himself, just so there's something to starve off the young boy's boredom. But with that, you're in the game, and look at this! Not first person and not stuck in set spaces. We're really pushing the boat out with this series now. I kid. I never minded the old style at all. I do, however, love this art style. I've always been a sucker for the retro, having grown up with a Sega Mega Drive, Game Boy, and eventually the PlayStation 2. There's a lot from that era that sings to me, so I'm easily pleased with a pixel art style. What I think was surprising though is that they really make the horror work in this game despite the style. Whenever you dive into the ball pit, you're sent back in time to 1985. In this version of the building, you can really feel the almost alien tension made by both the visuals and music through every room. Even when it's bustling and filled with references to Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and The Wizard of Oz, you still feel out of place. Bro, did Freddy just hit the wave? Never mind, I'm with my people. In all seriousness, they even slipped in a few game mechanics that only exist to serve the tension. Like how you can randomly trip every other time you turn while running, which not only stalls you, but also makes a lot of noise. More on that in a second. Once you're more familiar with everything, you play hide and seek with a few kids, hide in a spare golden Freddy suit, and witness the creature itself, and I can't stress enough how effectively they made it here. I like that there's a sort of joke ending where you can just leave once the creature starts attacking, but you'll leave Oz stranded in 1985 with no way home or back to his father. You have to learn when to run and when to hide, as you're just a kid trying to survive an adult-sized steel monster. There's a noise meter at play too. Make too much, banging things around, tripping, getting jump scared by Freddy and the gang, and you'll alert the creature right to you. From there, your options are limited, but you have to make them fast. There's many hiding spots all over the pizzeria, and all of them have minigames tied to staying silent if the creature is nearby. Mess any up, and it's a quick trip to darkness. But we've seen this before in the series. If you get back to the ball pit, you effectively survive the night, right? Right? Well, about that, the creature comes home with you. In fact, it steals Oz's dad away just as you think you've gotten free and replaces him. No one else can see the beast other than Oz. This is partly why I love this game. Even in the safe haven, you're in danger. The creature will kill you if you're in the past and will drag you home and pretend to be dad in the present, and because the town is just that unsavable, there isn't a service to even the police. It's a home invasion story, but no one else believes it's happening. You're on your own. That's genuinely a great premise in my opinion. From here, the game works in a loop of doing objectives to survive either the night at the house or the world on the other side of the pit, while occasionally dipping into other areas like the school or the old mill, all in an effort to save Oz's dad and escape the creature. For example, when you first get back home on night 1, Oz comes up with a plan to call his mother off of his dad's phone. So we have to lure the creature out of the master bedroom, get the phone, but his dad never saved numbers, so now we need to find out what mum's number is, which is pinned to the fridge in the kitchen, but the creature is roaming the house looking for us now. I actually got tipped off at one point in the basement because the house cat, Jinx, started freaking out. I hid and in came the threat, which was a cool detail I wanted to add. Once you have the number, the phone call is loud enough to alert the creature no matter what. Once you're safe again, you need to get to the front door once mum arrives. I tried to make a mad dash to the front door and learned the hard way what it's like for a kid to try and actually outrun a 6.5 foot tall death monster. Anyway, mum arrives, but the creature is back in dad mode and she doesn't believe Oz's fears. You're dragged back to your room, so now we need to sneak out and try and get back to the ball pit at Jeff's pizza place. But to do that, you need to escape via the bedroom window, as the front door is a no-go. Yet it's rusted shut, so you need a screwdriver first. Do you see what I mean? A gradual escalation of objectives to slowly unravel the nightmare while constantly being hunted. Thankfully, unlike, say, Sister Location, the checkpoints are pretty reasonable in this game. Death will usually send you back to the start of that current objective. Like when I died running to the door previously, I was taken back to just after Oz called his mum. The creature can be deceptively smart sometimes too. I say deceptive because jumping in a hiding spot will always eventually lead to it giving up, but at one point I made a noise in the attic. Once I hid in a box up there, I saw the creature come up the ladder and close the hatch behind it to ensure I couldn't escape the room so easily. Something as simple as that goes a long way in these kind of games to sell a threat. It's one thing avoiding a monster, it's another to evade a smart one. The phone Oz took from his dad's side is one of the constant tools in the game for puzzles and the like. It also houses a few Easter eggs of its own, like being able to call numbers close to the marionette or mangle with sounds to suit. But most notably is that you can call William Afton if you know his number, leading to audibly hearing the spring lock suit crushing down and killing him. Eventually I go out the house though, but not by finding the screwdriver, which leads to my next compliment for this game. Even if it leads to the same outcome, I appreciate games letting you find your own path through. Instead of using the bedroom window I hinted at earlier, I found a rope and used the attic window instead to escape the house. From here you have a list of locations to run to when you're not just going to either the pizza place or home. Whilst working on whatever objectives, there's a couple side quests to keep track of that will ultimately affect your ending. The main two being finding all of Oz's dad's stuff, the other being to fix and beat all the arcade machines alongside finding the 3 secret arcade games. The former for the good ending and the later to get the true ending to it all. Through Dad's things, you can get little tidbits of the relationship between the father and son. Through the arcade machines, well, it's a FNaF game, so of course all the lore is hidden in those, even if I'm not really sure what to make of any of it on its own, as I think it more ties directly to the book series this game is based on, Fazbear Frights, and I just haven't read them to know the connections. Not that you'll be finding these secret arcades without a guide, I might add. Something about games with a spring Bonnie suit out to kill you having extremely abstract secrets is a strange, albeit funny coincidence. Like sure, let me just check the same candy machine 100 times for the first minigame. Why not? Something else I absolutely want to talk about because I really haven't had much of a reason to up to this point is the soundtrack. There's a lot of great atmospheric tension tracks as always, but there's some real retro feeling tunes with a dark cold synth line going through them that just sings to me. I love video game music, that's not much of a surprise I know, but I genuinely do, and I always like talking about it when I can. Unfortunately, up until this point, there's only been like 3 tracks in the series that have ever stood out to me, and not all of them are even for good reasons. Toreador March from FNaF 1 because classical music is always nice, the main menu theme of FNaF 2 because of how often I died, it eventually just stuck in my mind, and the ending theme of Pizzeria Simulator because of how it complemented Henry's iconic speech. Outside of that though, no, I couldn't name you a single piece honestly, minus maybe for memes like smashing windshields from Pizza Sim. So this was such a genuine breakout for me to just scream music for a minute. Even Death gives you an atmospheric treat of a track. It almost reminds me of the atmospheric tracks in the Axiom Verge games. My point ultimately with all of this is that the game knows how to sell its setting, from the atmosphere, to the music, to the locations, and how they're designed to feel maze-like without ever actually being a maze. I haven't even mentioned the game has a limited light source in the form of your flashlight. Perhaps as a nod to FNaF 2, the flashlight has limited battery but can absolutely save your neck when needed to. From just helping you locate things on the floor to flashing the creature if it catches you for a moment to try and get away. The other thing I noticed after a while is the actual speed of the creature works well for ensuring it stays a threat yet also not frustrating the player from losing too often. I say this only playing on the game's normal difficulty, frightening mode, but the creature would start out noticeably slower than Oz when it spotted him and started to give chase. But if you didn't lose him immediately, the creature gets faster and faster until eventually you absolutely cannot outrun it as it blasts into rooms at Mark 7. If you can't find a hiding spot straight away, the pressure to get away from the creature rises up almost immediately as you're essentially on an invisible time limit. If you only run, it will catch up eventually. Although I haven't tested it myself, I've been told the hardest difficulty, unlocked after beating the game, has the creature always at max speed, so I can see challenge runs on this game being very intense at times. Another thing I liked was the vents. What starts out as just another spot to hide in eventually becomes a form of quick travel across the map. Each vent only connects to one other vent, but for jumping from one end to the other in a hurry, it became a godsend later on and felt like a very natural way to handle quick travel. There's also what can only be described as an anxiety system in this game. The more time you spend trying to survive the creature, running away and hiding, the more often Oz will trip when running, and occasionally you'll get jumped by hallucinations, so you need to look after this kid as best as possible to stop him freaking out at the worst moment and getting himself killed. Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie also eventually show up as well, with Chica as early as Night 2, but they're somewhere in between how they worked in the classics and how they were in FNAF 3. They can kill you, but they're unlikely to. Instead, when they spot you, they tend to be really loud about it, like the Phantoms were in FNAF 3, luring the creature to your location almost instantly. Like with Sister Location, I'm not going to go over absolutely everything this game has to offer, as I think it'd be more fun for those who haven't experienced it to give it a try, but if it wasn't obvious by just how much I rattled on about this game now, I genuinely love it. It's easily my favourite game in the series, and honest to god, one of the better horror games I've played in a while. Megacat Studios, I really hope you make another one someday, because if this is what your first effort for this series is, then I can't wait to see where you go from here. This is based on just the first of the Fazbear Frights, so why not make games for each book going through? I did a quick search, and the second book is called Fetch, featuring a dog-like animatronic, which could be fantastic for a horror setting if set up properly. Honestly, regardless of my opinion on any other FNAF game I've played or have yet to play, I'm gonna keep an eye out for this team in the future. They nailed it. I think the only thing that didn't completely stick the landing was the school subplot. Throughout the game, you still have to go to school each day, and although the sections themselves are nice pace breakers from the horror, and an opportunity to get new equipment for the upcoming night, the actual story involving this bully trying to ruin Oz's day is kinda generic, and played about as well as any other school bully is played, aka it isn't. I appreciated the idea of having something else going on to spice it up, but I didn't care for it at all. Doesn't help that it just doesn't go anywhere. The bully just does the bully thing, Oz eventually hits him, and that's the very last scene in the school in the playthrough. The game, like most of the series, has multiple endings too. Since I was curious about lore stuff at the offset, I had a guide on standby to help me locate the key things I needed, so I got the best ending, or the 3-star ending as the game calls it. The ending itself is a pretty self-contained happy ending all in all. Oz saves his dad and the two rebuild their relationship. I think it's the minigames as per that tell a different story. In particular, they show a dog in the pizzeria mauling some kids, so maybe they are going to make a game out of that second book after all. They also show a tall, skinny version of the circus baby in one of them. I don't know if it's supposed to be Baby, or if it's another case of something looking similar but not quite the same, sort of like Fredbear and Freddy, for example, but I only know what the games have given me alone, so that's a topic left alone for now. Completely defeating the creature at the end of the game felt satisfying too. In fact, it's probably the second most satisfying victory next to Pizza Sim's ending. For your completion rewards, you unlock 2 harder difficulties, with the later having permadeath if you're really confident you can take down the creature. But beyond that, there's also advanced sliders to really customize the difficulty. Like, why not turn off every hiding spot, audio distraction, and safety net in the game? Really throw yourself into the ultimate custom night. Hang on a minute. There's also the extra screens, which have your usual stuff, checking the animatronics, rewatching jump scares, see the full inventory, and so on. I appreciate a sound test being here too, considering how genuinely solid the OST in this is. All in all, this one's a keeper. I really hope Megacat Studios make that Fetch game I mentioned earlier, because I think this is the future of FNAF I want to be a part of. As a whole, Into the Pit is my new favourite entry in the series. Sister Location is my second favourite, and FNAF 3 in third. I'm not quite done though, because at this point, even if I'm hesitant, I might as well try the Steel Wool era at some point, so eventually there will be a third video covering Security Breach, Ruin, and Secret of the Mimic, but not straight away. I need a small break after pumping both of these out in a kinda short time span. The last video ended with me giving a full run of the whole story from my perspective on it, but I kinda can't do that here as each game felt pretty self-contained as a whole. Like, what else can I add? UCN is Afton's Purgatory, Help Wanted 1 is simulation of the old horror while teasing Security Breach, its sequel felt like a side story of how Circus Baby got around, Into the Pit is an isolated story of a very dedicated kid out to rescue his dad from time travel hell. So since that's out the window, I think this time I'll instead just take the opportunity to thank you all for the support I received on the last video. It completely blew past all expectations, and I genuinely can't stress enough just how motivating it was. My last full review before that FNAF video was on Hitman Blood Money a whole year prior to that one. I just didn't have the energy or willpower to want to finish any of my scripts for videos, and many projects have been left sitting on the side for a while now. but I really enjoyed making both of these videos, and the reception on the last one is a huge reason I even made this one. So again, thank you. Let me leave you with my boy, Mr. Hippo, the star of UCN, to sign me off. And I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever that may be.
After all,
Peace.
it reminds me of one summer day in the park. I was having just a delightful picnic with my good friend Orville. And I said to him, Orville, I have a story. And he said to me, what's the significance of the story? And I said to him, Orville, not every story has to have significance, you know? Sometimes a story is just a story. If you try to read into every little thing and find meaning in everything anyone says, you'll just drive yourself crazy. I had a friend do it once. Wasn't pretty. We talked about it for years. And not only that, but you'll likely end up believing something you shouldn't believe, and thinking something you shouldn't think, or assuming something you shouldn't assume, you know? Sometimes, I said, a story is just a story. So just be quiet for 1 second of your life and eat your sandwich, okay? Of course, it was only then I realized I made sandwiches, and poor Orville was having such difficulty eating it. Elephants have those clumsy hands, you know? Actually, I suppose that's the problem. They don't have hands at all, do they? They're all feet. I couldn't imagine someone asking me to eat a sandwich with my feet. Now, if I recall correctly, there was a bakery nearby. I said to him, Orville, let me go get you some rye bread. Now, I'm unsure if elephants enjoy rye bread, but I assure you that Orville does. Now, this was on a Tuesday, which was good because rye bread was always fresh on Tuesday. They made sourdough bread on Monday and threw it out Wednesday, or rather they sold it at a discount for people wanting to feed the ducks, and then probably at the end of the day, finally they threw it all out. I don't recall. I do remember a man who would bring his son to the bakery every Wednesday and then go feed the ducks. He would buy all of the sourdough bread. Of course, you know, you're not supposed to feed the ducks sourdough bread at all. It swells up in their stomach and then they all die. At least that's what I've heard. You know, I never saw any ducks die myself, but I did notice a substantial decrease in the duck population over the course of a few years. I just never thought to stop the man and tell him that he was killing the ducks by feeding them sourdough bread. And if you want my opinion on the matter, and I told Orville this as well, if you want to feed ducks, or birds, or any kind for that matter, it's best to buy seed. I mean, when you think about it, breads of any sort don't occur in nature. They don't grow on trees or spring up from the bushes. I don't think birds know what to do with bread. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So I bought Orville some rye bread. What a fine day it was.